We are now 267 days away from the midterm elections, and today, in-person voting began in Texas ahead of its first in the nation primary just 2 weeks from tomorrow, so please register and vote. As Democrats try to keep control of both chambers of Congress, Republicans have made it clear that their strategy across the country is to focus on the classroom culture wars. They saw how Glenn Youngkin joined in on right-wing organizations' plan to use conservative parents' dislike of Toni Morrison's and other books by Black authors to generate enough agitation among white suburban voters to eke out a win in Virginia last November. And now Republicans are replicating his playbook in Wisconsin, where they're trying to unseat Democratic Governor Tony Evers. We've all seen the videos of school board meetings looking more like a WWE ring, with both verbal and physical threats of violence over mask mandates and school curriculums on race, racial history, and sexuality, followed by attempts to ban books that teach those topics from school classrooms and from libraries. But while the book banners may be loud, they are not the only ones making their voices heard, thanks to democracy defenders like Katie Paris and her group Red, White, and Blue. It's a national network of multiracial suburban women, especially moms, who are mobilizing to counter those disruptive AstroTurf groups. Among its activities, running training sessions to help women learn strategies to fight back while presenting a calm face and peaceful demeanor. In just a few years since the group's founding, its network reaches more than 300,000 women. And joining me now is our Reid democracy defender today, Katie Paris, founder of Red, Wine, and Blue. You had me at wine. Thank you for being here. Talk about the origin of this name.
You know, I started Red, Wine, and Blue following the 2018 elections, when the big story coming out of those elections was suburban women becoming more politically engaged. And I live in Ohio, and it just didn't happen here quite as much. And I wanted to know why. And so I started traveling around the state. And much to my surprise, and it was a good surprise, I found women meeting in living rooms, usually with a glass or two of wine, getting together and saying, you know what, I'm feeling kind of alone in my community, but does anyone else feel like something's really wrong here since the election of Donald Trump? And they started working together, getting stuff done together, and even helping each other get elected to offices like city council and school board. And so I thought, these women are not your typical political activists. We need to amplify their voices. We need to connect them together. Their networks are not politically polarized. They live in areas that have been more traditionally Republican and conservative, but they're turning away from that. And wow, if we could bring them all together, that's a lot of power.
Let me show you just a little bit of a sample of kind of the way some of these school boards have begun to look. And, you know, again, I always like to emphasize to people, this is not just, you know, coming up from the grassroots. These are AstroTurf organizations that are putting a lot of money into organizing this. And these are small groups of people, but very disruptive. Here's a sample.
We should take our kids and we should pull them out of school.
Touch me.
How much money did you and your touch
Hey. Whoa, guys, come on. Hey, officers, please come to the room.
We know who you are. We know who you are. You can leave freely, but we will find you, and we know who you are. Be allowed in public again.
I mean, some of those are real jet threats. I mean, what do you counsel women who are part of Red, Wine, and Blue to do if they find themselves in a situation like that?
Yes. So as you can imagine, when women see images like that and you say, so, hey, how about come down to the next school board meeting? That might not sound like something they immediately want to do, right? So we need to change, we need to flip the script. We need to put this on terms where our women can feel really proud and comfortable showing up together. And that means that they're going to show up differently. So we have created a community where women can come together, support each other, share best practices. You know, what's going to happen at these meetings? Where can we all meet beforehand? How early should we show up? Where can we find information about how many of us can show up at what time? So how many speakers do we need to have? What should we expect to hear? Let's make sure that where they're booing and shouting and pushing, we can stand together, maybe all wear the same color, have, you know, the masks on them that say keep schools open or some positive message. And when we speak, let's politely and cheerfully applaud each other. Or if they're not allowing applause, let's show some other form of positivity. And it's that contrast that we're going for, because, there's a lot of parents that are just kind of looking in on this on the sidelines going, what is even happening? And we want to present a contrast and show, it doesn't have to be like that. Those of us who are just mainstream moms, we want to set a good example for our kids. And we don't want this Fox News right-wing think tank idea of what parents showing up at school boards are to set the narrative. We want to take that into our own hands.
This whole conversation, I'm glad you mentioned narrative, because, the sort of narrative, and the media is guilty of this, of saying suburban, right? Which generally means white suburban moms. Let's just be blunt.
Yep.
But I know, having grown up in the suburbs, a very black suburb in Denver, Colorado, that the suburbs are not all white, right? You have a lot of gentrification is pushing a lot of people who did live downtown into the suburbs. The suburbs are getting increasingly, you have a lot of people of color who are becoming affluent enough to buy into the suburbs. So these suburbs are much more mixed race, and so are the schools. Let me just put these numbers up. Schools used to be, in 2009, 54% white, the children, I mean. They're now 47% white. They are 15% black, slightly down. It's the Latino student population that's really the growing population. How does your group deal with that? And how do you deal with the fact that the whole idea of a suburban mom is a lot different now than the way that the media tends to portray it?
Well, the media can say what they will, but we are going to be here every day accurately representing ourselves. And we hope that the way the media talks about it does eventually change, because the suburbs are diverse, and that's really good news. I mean, that's part of why most of us actually like living in the suburbs. We like living sort of nearby to cities where there's a lot of culture. We like that not everybody is exactly the same. We're not living in perfect houses with picket fences. We are not, suburban housewives from the 1950s, as Donald Trump referred to us. And so we are going to represent ourselves in a way that is consistent with our values and accurately represents who we are. It's something we talk about a lot.
Democracy defender Katie Paris, thank you very much. Really appreciate you. Red, Wine, and Blue. That's one of the best names that anybody's come up with for a group, too. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's Absolute Worst is up next.